The midday sun burned over the concrete stretch of Naval Station Coronado. A formation of young Navy SEAL trainees stood in crisp lines on the training deck, sweat glistening on their foreheads. They were loud, confident, joking between drills, the kind of bravado that only youth and untested pride could bring. Near the edge of the training field, sitting quietly on a low bench, was an old man. His jacket was worn, his red shirt faded, and his hands rested on a wooden cane scarred with age. No insignia, no hat, nothing to mark who he was, just another visitor, waiting patiently in the shade of the hangar wall. To the recruits, he looked like nothing more than someone's grandfather who'd wandered too close to the training area. "Hey, old-timer!" one of the SEAL candidates called out, smirking as the others turned.
"You lost, sir?"
"This area is restricted for active personnel." The old man lifted his eyes slowly, the trace of a polite smile forming. "Just watching the ocean," he said softly, his voice steady but gentle. "Brings back memories." The trainee, Petty Officer Daniel Klein, stepped closer, wiping sweat from his brow. "Memories, huh? You a tourist or a vet?" The old man didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted past the drills, toward the distant horizon where the Pacific shimmered silver blue. "You could say I served," he murmured. Daniel grinned, nudging the man's cane with his boot. "Oh yeah, what was your rank, sir?" A few trainees chuckled. They were teasing, not cruel, but there was an edge to it, the casual arrogance of those who hadn't yet learned that quiet men often carried heavy histories. Before the old man could reply, a sharp voice cut across the deck. "Petty Officer Klein! Get back in line!" The recruit straightened instantly. Captain Reed, commanding officer of the SEAL training detachment, was crossing the field. Every man on the deck froze as he approached. Reed's presence carried the weight of authority. Tall, lean, the kind of officer who never needed to shout twice. But as Reed's eyes fell on the old man by the bench, his expression changed. The captain's pace slowed. Then, to everyone's shock, he stopped completely. A long silence followed. "Captain," Sir Klein began, but Reed raised a hand, silencing him. "Petty Officer," Reed said quietly, without looking at him. "Do you know who that man is?" Klein blinked, confused. "No, sir. Just some old veteran, I guess." Reed's jaw tightened. He stepped closer to the old man, his tone softening. "Sir, I didn't know you were coming today." The trainees stared. "Sir, did their captain just call the old man, sir?" The old man finally looked up at him. "Didn't plan to. Just passing through, Captain," he said with a faint smile. "Didn't mean to cause a scene." Reed straightened to attention. "You never cause a scene, sir. You earned the right to walk anywhere on this base." Klein swallowed, feeling something heavy shift in the air. He looked at the man again, really looked, and noticed small details he'd missed before. The faded anchor tattoo on his wrist. The way his cane had initials carved near the handle, EJM. The calm in his eyes steady and unshakable, like someone who'd seen too much to ever be impressed by shouting. The old man nodded once. "Carry on with your training, Captain," but Reed didn't move. He turned to his men, his voice sharp and ringing with authority. "Formation, attention!" Every SEAL trainee snapped to position, including Klein. Then Captain Reed faced them. "Gentlemen," he said, "this man sitting here is Admiral Elijah Marcus, retired commander of SEAL Team 6, and the man whose operations most of your tactics were built on." Gasps rippled through the ranks. The same man they'd just mocked now looked suddenly larger than life. The name alone, SEAL Team 6, carried a shadow of legendary missions whispered in every training manual. The old man, Admiral Marcus, only shook his head faintly. "Don't embarrass me, Reed, that was a long time ago." But the captain stood firm. "With respect, sir, you earned every salute you get." He turned to his trainees. "On my command, present arms." Every young SEAL snapped a salute, hands trembling slightly. Klein's throat tightened as he realized his mistake. The old man who'd sat quietly, almost invisible, had once led men into missions that changed history. Admiral Marcus rose slowly to his feet, returning the salute with a steady hand. His voice was low, almost breaking. "At ease, gentlemen. I'm not here for recognition. I'm just proud to see the next generation standing tall." As the formation relaxed, silence hung heavy in the air, not out of awkwardness, but out of respect. And yet, under that silence, a question burned in Klein's mind. What kind of man was he? What had he seen that made him so quiet, so calm, even when mocked? He didn't know it yet, but before the week was over, that question would be answered in a way none of them would forget. The next morning, the base buzzed with quiet rumors. Every corridor, every mess hall conversation circled back to the same topic: the old admiral. Who was he really? Why had he come back? Captain Reed offered no explanation. All he'd said in the briefing was, "Admiral Marcus will be observing training this week. Treat him with respect." Klein couldn't stop thinking about the man. He'd seen real officers before, but there was something different about Marcus. Something heavy in his eyes, like the weight of ghosts. During drills, Klein caught glimpses of him at a distance, always watching, never interfering. Once, when a trainee stumbled on an underwater navigation test, Marcus simply turned away, muttering to Reed, "Same mistake I made in '89. Cost me 2 good men." Reed nodded grimly. "We've learned from it, sir." Later that day, Klein worked up the courage to approach him. "Admiral Marcus, sir?" he said hesitantly. Marcus turned, offering a patient nod. "Yes, son? I just wanted to apologize, sir, for yesterday." "I didn't know," the Admiral smiled gently. "That's the point, son. You weren't supposed to know. A man's worth isn't in the rank on his chest. It's in how he carries himself when no one's watching." Klein nodded slowly, taking in every word. There was no anger in Marcus's tone, only quiet wisdom, the kind that came from too many years and too many regrets. "Were you really commander of SEAL Team 6? Klein asked softly. Marcus didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted toward the flag fluttering over the base. "I led them," he said finally. "But I lost more men than I care to remember. Titles fade. Faces don't," Klein hesitated. "Is that why you left?" Marcus's lips pressed into a thin line. "Let's just say some ghosts don't salute back." The conversation ended there, but the words stayed with Klein long after. By evening, a quiet respect began spreading among the trainees. They no longer saw Marcus as an old man, but as a living archive of what they all hoped to become, and feared they might never match. What no one knew, however, was that Admiral Marcus's visit wasn't random. Captain Reed had called him weeks before for something much bigger. A classified exercise that would test not just skill, but character, and the young SEALs were about to find out what real leadership looked like. 2 days later, an unexpected alarm shattered the morning calm, a simulated base breach drill, unannounced. Chaotic, meant to test response time under pressure. Sirens wailed as trainees scrambled for gear. Reed watched from the observation deck beside Admiral Marcus. "This is their first high-intensity simulation," Reed said. "We'll see who cracks." Marcus said nothing. His eyes tracked every movement with surgical precision. Down below, chaos reigned. Orders clashed. Radios screamed static, and several trainees ran the wrong direction. Klein, assigned as team lead, was shouting commands, trying to get control. "Delta Squad, flank right," he ordered. "Bravo, secure the breach point." But confusion spread. Smoke, simulated gunfire, radio jamming. Everything felt real. Klein's men hesitated. Training or not, panic was contagious. Up above, Reed frowned. "He's losing control." Marcus stepped forward. "Permission to assist?" Reed blinked. "Sir, it's a sealed sim." "Then unseal it," Marcus said firmly. Moments later, the observers watched as the old admiral stepped directly into the chaos, unarmed, no headset, cane in hand. Every camera followed him as he walked straight through the smokescreen. Calm as the eye of a storm. When Klein saw him appear through the haze, he froze. "Sir, you can't be—" "Eyes up, son," Marcus said quietly. "Your men are watching you," Klein swallowed. They're out of position?" "Then reposition them," Marcus said, calmly. "Like they'll follow you through fire if you sound like you mean it." Klein steadied his breath. "Bravo, hold perimeter. Delta, push with me on the left." Something changed. The men stopped panicking. The tone in Klein's voice grew sharper, anchored by the quiet presence of the Admiral beside him. "Good," Marcus said softly. "Now adapt. Never fight the battle you expected. Fight the one you're in." Within minutes, the breach drill turned around. By the end, Klein's team cleared the objective with near-perfect timing. When the alarms went silent, applause erupted in the control room. Captain Reed watched the monitors, shaking his head in disbelief. "He still has it," he murmured. Later in the debrief, Reed addressed the trainees. What you witnessed today wasn't just skill, it was leadership under fire. And it came from both of you, Petty Officer Klein and Admiral Marcus. Marcus raised a hand. Correction, Captain. It came from him. I just reminded him what he already had. The room was silent. For the first time, Klein understood what kind of man stood before him. Not a relic of the past, but a teacher who had turned war into wisdom. The day after the drill, the base seemed quieter. Training resumed, but an unspoken tension hung in the air, not fear, but expectation. Everyone knew Admiral Marcus was still on site. Every salute felt sharper, every order more deliberate. Klein arrived early at the mess hall and found Marcus alone at a corner table, a folded newspaper beside his tray. The Admiral was staring at a black and white photo pinned to the page. A much younger man in desert fatigue standing beside a helicopter, dust swirling behind him. Klein hesitated. That picture, that you? Marcus nodded slowly. Somalia, 1993. He touched the edge of the image with a calloused finger. We were sent to extract 2 journalists. Simple in and out. It wasn't simple. Klein sat down across from him, silent. We lost 5 men that day, Marcus continued. One of them was my spotter, Jenkins. He was 19. He'd just told me he was going to propose to his girlfriend when we got home. I told him to wait until after the mission. Marcus's voice tightened. He never got that chance. Klein swallowed. Sir, how do you live with that? You don't, Marcus said. You learn to carry it instead of letting it crush you. The Admiral folded the paper, eyes distant. That's what command means, son. Not glory, responsibility. That afternoon, Captain Reed assembled the trainees in the briefing hall. Tomorrow's exercise, he announced, is Operation Iron Tide, a full-scale coastal infiltration sim. Admiral Marcus will serve as strategic advisor. A murmur rippled through the room. Having the legendary commander involved in their exercise was both thrilling and terrifying. Marcus stepped forward. You'll be divided into 2 task units, Alpha and Bravo. One defends the coastal radar station. The other infiltrates and disables it. You'll plan, execute, adapt, and you'll do it under the clock. He scanned their faces. You win or lose as a team. Rank means nothing if you can't earn respect. Klein found himself assigned as Bravo's second-in-command under Lieutenant Vega, a sharp but arrogant officer who clearly saw Marcus as a relic. When the meeting ended, Vega muttered under his breath, "We don't need a ghost from the 80s telling us how to run ops." Marcus heard him. "Then prove it tomorrow," he said simply. Night fell over the coast. The air was cold, the surf breaking in steady rhythm against the pylons of the pier. Bravo team crouched in the dark, wetsuits slick with seawater, weapons ready. Over the comms, Vega whispered, "Alpha's radar sweep starts in 60. We move on my mark." Klein checked his compass. "Current's heavier than forecast," he said. Vega brushed him off. "We stick to plan. East approach, then north crawl to the station fence." Marcus's voice crackled through the radio from the command post. "Lieutenant Vega, you've got a cross-current developing. Shift west by 50 meters or you'll hit shallow rocks." "Copy," Vega said flatly, then switched channels. "Ignore that," he told the team. "We trained for this route." Klein hesitated. "Sir, Admiral Marcus, enough, Klein!" Vega snapped. "We're not changing course for bedtime stories." They moved out. Within minutes, the current grew violent, slamming them against the reef line. 2 divers lost their footing and one gashed his leg. Klein fought to pull him clear. "We're off course!" he shouted. Through the radio, Marcus's calm voice returned. "Bravo! Disengage east immediately." "You've drifted into a dead pocket," Vega cursed but complied. They regrouped, panting on the far beach. The mission clock had bled precious minutes. Marcus radioed again. "Vega, you've got 10 minutes to objective. Reroute through drainage culvert 2 Alpha." "How the hell do you know that tunnel's clear?" Vega demanded. "I built the damn blueprints 30 years ago," Marcus replied. Silence. Then Vega muttered, "Copy that." They crawled through the narrow culvert, emerging behind the radar compound. Klein took point, disabling sensors. Everything moved like clockwork, until a flare shot up from the north ridge. Alpha had spotted them. Gunfire blanks cracked through the night. Vega barked orders, voice shaking. Klein saw panic creeping in. That same edge Marcus had warned about. Bravo! Defensive arc! Klein shouted. Move, move! He took control instinctively, rallying his men, cutting across Vega's indecision. They neutralized the enemy sensors and triggered the signal. Objective complete. From the control tower, Marcus watched the feed, expression unreadable. When the debrief came the next morning, Reed asked, "Who led Bravo after contact?" Vega spoke quickly. "I did, sir," Marcus's eyebrow lifted. "You sure about that, Lieutenant?" Klein looked down, unwilling to contradict his superior. Reed reviewed the footage on screen, Klein's voice giving clear, steady commands while Vega hesitated. The room went silent. Reed turned. "Admiral?" Marcus folded his arms. "Looks to me like leadership found him when it was needed most." Klein's cheeks burned. Vega said nothing. After the meeting, Marcus pulled Klein aside. "You didn't take command for pride. You did it to save lives. That's the difference between a leader and a title." 2 nights later, Marcus sat alone on the pier, the Pacific wind tugging at his jacket. A folded envelope lay beside him, yellowed, edges worn. He opened it slowly. "Elijah, if you're reading this, it means you made it home. Don't let the uniform be the only thing that defines you. Live for the men who can't." Timer David Jenkins, the same 19-year-old he'd mentioned in the mess hall, Klein approached quietly, seeing the tears glisten in the old man's eyes. "Sir?" he asked softly. Marcus wiped them away. "Old ghost, son. You still blame yourself?" "Every day. But lately, I think maybe carrying their memory is how I keep them alive." They stood in silence. "The ocean whispering below, sir," Klein said. "You taught me more this week than any manual ever could." Marcus smiled faintly. "Then my work here's done." The next morning, Admiral Marcus prepared to leave. The entire detachment gathered on the tarmac. Captain Reed stepped forward. "Admiral Marcus, on behalf of Naval Special Warfare Command, thank you for reminding us what this uniform stands for." Marcus inclined his head. "Take care of them, Captain. They're the future." Reed turned to the formation. "Officers, present arms." Hundreds of hands snapped to salute. The same trainees who once mocked him now stood rigid, eyes wet, saluting not a symbol but a man who had shown them the soul of the Navy. Klein's voice broke the silence. "Permission to speak, sir?" Reed nodded. Klein stepped forward. "Sir, request permission to name our next training cycle Operation Marcus, to honor the lessons we learned." Marcus's eyes softened. "Denied," he said quietly. Confusion rippled through the ranks until he added, "Name it Operation Jenkins. He deserves it more." The wind carried the words across the deck. Every man stood a little taller. Marcus gave one final salute and turned toward the transport waiting at the gate. As he walked away, his cane tapped a steady rhythm, the last echo of a life spent in service and the quiet legacy he left behind. Klein watched until he disappeared beyond the hangar. "Fair winds, Admiral," he whispered. Months later, a new plaque appeared at Coronado's training ground, in honor of Lieutenant David Jenkins and Admiral Elijah Marcus, whose courage taught generations that leadership is earned, not worn. Beneath it, a small inscription read, "Respect the quiet ones." They've already fought their wars, and every class that passed through Coronado stopped there at least once, to salute a man who never asked for recognition, yet commanded it with every quiet breath.